Hey guys, I'm back with another video. Sorry it took me so long to get another one up. I got sick, and then it was progression time, and I just didn't find time, but here we are. So this is a Blast Furnace Heroic, and instead of doing a clump of bosses here, I'm just going to leave this one separately, because it's kind of a long fight. But this is a 3-phase fight, and the goal of phase 1 is just to kill these heat regulators that are on either side of the furnace. They're little machine things there, and you can see us take a little bomb over there and blow it up. And that's what you do with these engineers. These engineers, they place a bomb on random members of the raid, and then they also drop a sack of bombs when they die, which you can interact with and put a bomb on yourself. These bombs do friendly damage, so you want to make sure not to blow each other up. Pop a personal when you're blowing up the regulators, but take them over there, ferry them over there, and just break that heat regulator. We do all left here as a raid, and then we go all right afterwards. You can do a split. You can do a groups 1 and 2 left, groups 2, 3, and 4 right. But we had more luck with this because we were able to kill Foreman Feldsparks a lot faster. Foreman Feldsparks, he puts a debuff on random players that makes them drop the little fire beneath their feet, which lingers for about a minute. So when you get that, just try and bring it to a wall before the debuff falls off. The other ad that spawns in this phase is the security guards, and these security guards need to be tanked away from the engineers and foremen because they drop a shield on a friendly ally within, I want to say, about 10 yards. It's not a huge range. That reduces all the damage they take while they stand in the shield by like 99% or 90% or something like that. So it's a pretty big deal whenever a shield gets put onto a operator or on foreman, because it'll basically just stop your DPS until those things get moved or until the shield expires. These operators don't do anything, but they increase the heat of the furnace, which is in itself important because the furnace pulses every time it hits 100 heat. It has its own little energy bar, and that little blast there just does raid-wide damage, and you wanna keep it easy for your healers. The operators don't have a lot of health though, so you just tank the engineers and Feldsparks on top of them and AoE them down and keep them under control. Now when you push into phase 2, these things become active, so you don't want to have more than 1 or 2 up. And you want to tank them immediately when they become active, but we'll get to that when we push here. The other thing to note here is that the engineers, they run over to the regulators and they have a cast time to repair them. And then they channel, and for every second they channel, they repair it about 30% or something like that, or not quite that much, like 10%. You just want to make sure that gets kicked by your melee. That's about it for this phase. We kill Foreman pretty quickly here, which helps a lot with tank damage. The engineers also have a little cast called Electrocution. Just kick it when you can. And in between engineers, pull the ads over to the security guards and kind of cleave them down before going back over and continuing the phase. But here we are, we've pushed. The operators have become active, and they have a little frontal cone, which you want to face away from the raid. At this point, your raid wants to do nothing but just clean up the ads that you have lingering from phase 1. So any security guards, looks like we have 4 up there, now 3, and these operators that have become active. And then once you clean these things up, you can start your phase 2. Now phase 2, 4 primal elementalists spawn, and they try and chain that heart of the mountain standing in the middle of the room. Now in order to get to phase 3, you have to kill these 4 primal elementalists, but they have a shield which makes them immune to all damage. The way you remove this shield is you take these slag elementals that spawn and you pull them on top of it and kill them. When they die, they do an explosion, deactivating themselves for 30 seconds and taking a shield off any primal elementalist in ranged. So you break that shield, and then you have 30 seconds to kill this primal elementalist before it gets its shield back up. It's pretty important that you kill this within 30 seconds, guys. The longer that you stay in phase 2, the more these slag elementals you get. They reactivate themselves after 30 seconds, and they're there for the rest of the fight, and then you can become overwhelmed pretty quickly. They fixate on random raid members that can't be tanked. They have a cast. It's not a ton of damage, but once you have like 10 of these things up, it is. Keep them kicked. Pull them over to the primal elementalist, kill the skull, and then burn the primal elementalist. When the primal elementalist is shieldless, that's your highest priority. It's just to single target that thing down. The slag elementalists are not something you want to AoE when you start getting multiple of them. You just want to leave them alone until you need to single target one down to break a shield. Now the other ad that spawns in this phase is a fire caller, and the fire callers, they have a couple abilities. They'll put a earth shield on the Primal Elementalist, which, if not dispelled after 8 seconds, will heal the Primal Elementalist for about 30% of its health, and that's massively bad. Make sure that you purge that or dispel it. Keep it off of the Primal Elementalist. The other thing they do is they put a Volatile Fire on random raid members, which basically just acts like Bomb from Phase 1. After, I think, 8 seconds, it'll explode for some raid damage in a 8-yard radius. Keep it out whenever you can. It's not a ton of extra raid damage, but you know, try and keep it away from the melee, keep it away from other ranged, and clean up these fire collars pretty much as soon as they spawn. If they spawn during a burn phase on the Primal Elementalist, just keep them kicked and keep burning. The last thing they do is they cast Cauterize Wounds, which just heals their target for a flat like 10%, and they'll cast that on the Primal Elementalist as well. So make sure that you kick that while you kill the Primal Elementalists. In between killing Primal Elementalists, you want to take a second to go ahead and kill any security guards that have spawned or any fire callers that just spawned. The security guards can drop their shield on the Elementalist, but the Elementalist actually can't be affected by it, so there's a little bonus there. You still want to tank the security guards away unless they've just recently dropped a shield, and then your off tank can kind of pull them in. If you know, just kind of use your brain. But that's the big thing about this phase, guys, is just getting out of it as fast as possible, because if you get too many slags up, it adds a lot to your phase 3 damage. And in addition to that, the longer you take in the phase, the closer you get to the fight's natural soft enrage. This fight just has a 10-minute wide enrage. It's not a raid wiping enrage, it's just that the Heart of the Mountain pulses a lot more for raid wide damage. So if you get to phase 3 at 10 minutes, you'll go and do it with him enraged. And a lot of guilds heal through this with 6 or 7 healers, depending on their raid size. You can also just kill the fight under 10 minutes with extra DPS, so you can 5 to 7 heal it, depending on the strengths of your raid. Well, that's about it for phase 2 here. Something to note, if you have monks in your raid, you can use Touch of Death to really secure a kill on these Primal Elementalists. We used our monk Touch of Death on 2 and 4 because we knew we'd have cooldowns for 1 and 3, but if you have 2 monks, you can use it on every single one, and that makes a big deal. So here's phase 3. The first thing we want to do is get the whole raid over to this corner, and I'll explain why in a second. Make sure your tank picks up the Heart of the Mountain here. It doesn't have a threat table at first, so it will melee some range unless it gets a taunt. Ranged and we're all DPS, need to immediately clean up all these security guards and fire callers that are left over from phase 2. They will drop shields in the boss. The boss won't take damage. You can see the boss was in the shield for a couple seconds there, and that's going to hurt our DPS, but otherwise just make sure these fire callers die, keep them kicked, and ignore the slag elementals. The slag elementals can be kicked, but they should never be DPS'd. They'll just reactivate themselves, and when they die, they do a bomb on the raids, so it's just extra damage that the healers can't handle. The ranged stays as 1 stack, and the reason for that is he puts a melt debuff on a random ranged member, which after a few seconds drops a puddle of slag beneath them, which grows. And you don't need to run that out. You can. But it grows anyways, so what you do is you just kind of keep it in the raid, it drops on the ground, the raid moves forward and out of it, and you do that around the entire room, and that's why we started back in that corner, so that we have a ton of real estate to burn the boss. The melee move, the boss moves, the ranged move, and you just do that for every single slag puddle. Now tanks, there's a debuff it's 2 debuffs called Heat and Tempered, and they interact in kind of an interesting way, but the basic of it that you need to know is that you want to taunt at 3 stacks of heat for the first set, and then 2 thereafter, and just go 2 for the rest of the fight. Tank damage gets really high here towards the end of the burn, so you'll need a lot of heals. You'll need to coordinate your cooldowns and rotate them every time that you're tanking the boss. Be smart about it. Every stack of Tempered you get increases the damage you take from all heat sources, or just all fire damage. So every time he pulses, all of his auto attacks, they do a lot of damage to you. The range, just keep moving. No other ads spawn in this phase. You just deal with the slags that you already have. You keep them kicked. You just keep away from them, and you heal through the damage. You absolutely don't kill them, though. Just careful with your extra cleave there. Otherwise, just coordinate your raid cooldowns. Every time he does a blast, you should have something to catch your raid back up. Even if it's every other blast, just make sure that the tanks are alive and that your raid is topped off. And he has a lot of health, but it's honestly a pretty easy burn once you get into this phase clean and sub 10 minutes. I think our first kill was 9 minutes and 45 seconds, and we 6 healed it, so if you have good DPS, you can do that as well. But that's basically the whole fight. Next up, I'm going to do, I think, Black Hand, but just leave me a comment if you guys have any questions or if you want to see anything in the future videos. And yeah, enjoy.